Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. In the spirit of consistency and speaking the truth, despite it not feeling perfect or me feeling a little crispy, crumbly, bumbly inside, I'm here and I want to talk about something. And I'm just going to put this out. So I'm going to tell you a story, personal story, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be able to relate to it, especially, my fellow survivors. I'm a survivor of abuse, systemic abuse, narcissistic abuse, and things like this. And what I like to do here on my YouTube channel is tell you about my experiences and what I observe on the level of my nervous system, my mind, my body, and tell you about the kind of intimate, vulnerable patterns and struggles that I experience, and also teach you and tell you about what I do to change those things and to pursue, being filled and sated and resourced and connected in ways that I was chronically denied. When I was younger, or when I was trapped in certain systems or sent to the troubled teen institution industry. If you don't know what that is, I would recommend watching Paris Hilton's documentary, Breaking Code Silence, or watch the Netflix program called The Program. It's a docu-series, and they both brilliantly illustrate what the troubled teen institution is like. So that's just an example of systemic oppression, right? When your safety and your sense of belonging and acceptance is dependent on, outside circumstances or rules that really just oppress you and take away your rights and deny you and teach you to be silent. And that's, what constitutes abuse. So I'm going to tell you my little story and then go into the wisdom that I have to share from that. So, most mornings of my life, and I made an Instagram post about this. If you want to find me on Instagram, I write a lot of stuff like this. I share snapshots of my life and photos and whatever. It's Rustic Peach, no spaces or punctuation or anything, just Rustic Peach. I'll put it in the bio. And you can read that post, and that's kind of what inspired me to make this video. So most mornings I wake up with a sense of emptiness or a void or an ache. And it's like as soon as I open my eyes and I become conscious and I think about my physical outside world, and I am moving from my dream space into my body and this reality and the mundane things that are existing and happening, and the fence outside my window, and the voices in the hallway, and the like waking life stimulus. When I become conscious of that, my nervous system almost floods my body with this sense of it's almost like anxiety and despair, although those are more emotional things, but the sensations feel like a mixture of coldness and tension and gripping and hollowness and emptiness in my diaphragm and like my sternum and my throat and my gut, and in this kind of central column inside of me there's this hollow, longing, aching, empty despair feeling. And when I was a kid, I'll tell you a little bit more about where this comes from. And I've shared a lot of stories about this on my channel, but I was raised by a narcissistic mother, and my understanding on narcissism is that it's just unhealed trauma. It's unacknowledged trauma. It's a gap it's a split in the fracture in the psyche so big that the person who's experiencing it, they don't have the resources or the help or they never found a way to reconnect those fragmented aspects of themselves so they can get away with, all the things that narcissists can get away with. And I want to point that out and, speak about it this way, because I'm not trying to point a finger at the person or the body of the human being who is behaving in narcissistic ways. I'm pointing a finger at the pattern. That's the enemy. That is the bad guy, not the person themselves, because in every human being there is a soul, there is a spirit, there's holiness, godliness, And it's the narcissism that is the enemy, not them. It's the fractures in the psyche that's the enemy, not them. And the more that I have distance and space from my mom, despite, everything she put me through, I'm not making an excuse for saying that it's okay what happened, or, that I'm going to just, go back and, have a relationship with this person when they've proven time and time again that they're not available. And it's harmful to be close with them. But I still see narcissism that way, and really any psychological, emotional, mental affliction, it's the disconnection that's the curse. It's the being disembodied that's the curse. It's the pattern that's the curse, not the soul of the person. And it's really, really, really tricky to, watch people go through this. So, I pray. I honestly pray for them, for their protection, for their release, whatever. Because there's nothing else I can do. There's nothing I can do to change these people or whatever. So anyway, that's my kind of perspective on narcissism from a grand overview, outside of the impact that it had on me and still has on me. But anyway, I grew up with that. And when I was a child, I literally was constantly physically pushed away. Anytime I would go to reach for a hug or a cuddle, I remember being like elementary school age, and going for a cuddle and being like pushed away, or my mom would like recoil or get grossed out or whatever. She was not a touchy kind of person, and she didn't know how to touch me in a nurturing, like soft, smooth way. And so because of that, I developed this kind of hypersensitivity to certain tactile, things. Like when someone takes something from me and their nails accidentally scrape me, that wigs me out beyond comprehension. Or, if I hear someone with like a certain, when people speak with dry mouths, or they enunciate in a very, very particular way I can't even emulate, that reminds me of my upbringing, I wig the fuck out. Or when people make like abrupt hand movements when they're talking, and they just slap the table when they're just talking, and they're just like, talking and just like doing this, that also creates a very, very, very strong visceral reaction in me. And so there are certain particular things that are a result of trauma responses, trauma survival. And so I grew up experiencing these things, and experiencing a constant lack of nurturing, safety, quiet and peace, the right kind of touch, emotional closeness. I remember when I would get upset or triggered, there was a handful of times in my early childhood when I would be hyperventilating, crying in my room by myself, so out of myself, and just disassociating, panicking, and just like having a hard time. And my mom would come in and she would make it worse, and she would bash me, she would belittle me, she would get mad at me, she would make me wrong, and it was just so terrible. And that was my childhood. My childhood was chaotic. My sister was thrown out of the house. She was the scapegoat in the family, and I could go on talking about all these things, but it's not important or useful right now. The point is that my childhood was full of neglect for me, and including the way that I was woken up. I would be woken up sometimes with singing, and I was way too still in dream world to tolerate noise, to tolerate a lot of sound. Like when I wake up, I like a gentle, easeful re-entry into the day, and I, partially because of trauma, I wake up and I feel hypersensitive, so I need to protect myself. And if I'm woken up by noise outside, or something happens unexpectedly or whatever, it can genuinely throw me off for hours or even for a whole day, because of the trauma that I went through and how triggering it is and how sensitive and delicate that kind of, those issues are. So, I would wake up and I would just cower and whine and scream when I didn't want to be sung to in the morning. And instead of just, being understood, from the perspective of a 7-year-old, if they're, literally hurting because the noise is upsetting them so much, and it's physically painful to deal with noise or stimuli that's just a notch more than you can handle, between all the trauma, all the loneliness, all the isolation, neglect, gaslighting, whatever, and on top of that being woken up to noise, just sent me over the edge. And yeah, I mean, this is part of the reason why I avoid, one of the reasons why I feel like I can't have roommates or I can't live with people, I need to live by myself, is because I've been this way all my life, and I need to like protect this part of myself. And I cannot stand I cannot stand noise in the morning. Like, I'm okay with birds and the wind and stuff, but like traffic sounds and voices and people talking, it's just, these things really impact me. And so if I can't control my environment that way, it's tough for me. And this is just a reality of the trauma that I've survived and who I am. And I'm also a very, very sensitive person on top of that. So it kind of amplifies everything. And I need, the right circumstances to kind of reset. And I'm not always hypersensitive to things like this, but when I'm already processing and dealing with a lot, it adds up to be a ton. So this morning, like pretty much, I want to say like 90% of my mornings, maybe there's 1 or 2 days a week on average weeks where I don't wake up feeling this like pit in my stomach, or this void or this feeling of absence. But it's more than half of the days of the week usually, depending on the week. But so I wake up with this kind of void and this feeling. And I wanted to talk about that because I wanted to destigmatize that and normalize that and just tell my story. This is my story. This is not anyone else's story to diagnose me or project onto me or prescribe something. And I want to sit here in my power and in that truth to narrate the reality for me, and in doing that, advocate for other people who haven't yet found their voices if they're experiencing something similar. So that's why I'm here. That's what I'm here to serve. And so I wanted to normalize that waking up with this feeling of voidness or absence is a result of your nervous system and brain and body remembering what it feels like to chronically expect absence, neglect, abuse, isolation in the mornings. Period. It doesn't mean that you're depressed. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It means that your body is screaming for peace, connection, regulation, maybe soft, kind, gentle touches in the morning. So there's that. And I just wanted to put this out there because this is my message for today. On top of that, in life, when you're a trauma survivor or just a human in general, we all have needs, we all have wants. And we are all wired for connection, and we all crave connection to different degrees, depending on what we already have available to us in our relationships and our environments and things like this. And so kind of parallel with this phenomenon of waking up feeling lonely and feeling aching and hollow in this void, there's a longing there. And the longing, just like that void sense, indicates that something is missing. And I'm going to kind of just flow into another story to kind of just share what I'm feeling with you. So one of the things that I am holding out for in faith, trusting God on, and am now fully in agreement with, like nobody can shake my sense of this, my opinion of this, and my conviction in this. One of the things that I need in my life that is going to come to pass, and it is going to partially fill this void, specifically of needing these gentle kinds of mornings and this nurturing kind of touch, and this consistent, safe, reliable, secure attachment experience with someone who can love me physically and emotionally at depths and in ways that, even the closest friendships can't fully meet. And that is a partner, that is a husband. And I have had this relationship with my emotions and my longing for really all my life, and I'm one to listen to my internal universe. And I have been in spaces before where when I speak about this longing, or when I acknowledge that I will meet a romantic partner and he will fill a part of this void for me, saying that out loud is directly confrontational and challenging to all the ideas, all the lies that have been thrown at me that say that I'm supposed to be happy on my own and I should just be grateful for what I have, or nobody can give you what you need, or you cannot be loved until you learn to love yourself. Those are the kinds of narratives that, as my vulnerable self was navigating the world, trying to connect and make sense of why I literally felt an insatiable hunger and longing for partnership, specifically amongst a sense of belonging in a community as a whole, okay? Both of those things I need and I long for. And when I was younger, and maybe not as secure in what these feelings and these longings and desires really meant for me, when I would share them with people, or in friendships, or in social circles, or in environments where I was just sharing and being social, a lot of people would spit back those narratives at me, and it discouraged me. And I'm saying these things because I don't want you to be discouraged for having longing or experiencing something similar to what I did. And you should have the best relationship with yourself. You're the only one that can have the most intimate, clearest, direct relationship with yourself. Nobody can, at the end of the day, nobody can tell you what's right and what's wrong for you. Only you can know what is true for you and what is real for you. So keep on speaking your truth and keep on acknowledging and being present with your truth. And you're going to get to a point where you're not going to be shaken by what people think about your longings, or the way that people try to pathologize you or manipulate you or put you in a box or make you think that the fairy tale that you actually dream of doesn't exist. Because to be honest, I think that my idea of a perfect life is aligned with what a lot of people consider a fairy tale or inaccessible. But I think that because I have faith and because I have very high standards and because I learned from abuse what I was missing, and in contrast I learned from that abuse what I needed and what I wanted and what my version of a fairy tale ideal perfect world would be, I decided that I am not gonna settle for less than that. And based off everything I've learned and all the knowledge I've accumulated and what I've learned from failures and past relationships, mistakes, things like this, I'm taking that knowledge and I'm applying it going forward so that I don't have to repeat the same patterns and the same situations, and I can say no to something that's 99% perfect but not 100%. If there's that one thing missing that I know my soul has been craving for my entire life, I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to be alone for as long as I can sustain and find ways to get my needs met in between, and keep praying to God and keep staying present with my trauma and my longing and the things that I'm experiencing until this thing comes into my life. And sometimes waiting for that thing to come into your life, waiting to have room for that thing requires, or not requires, but it kind of puts you in a situation where your human needs become stronger than your ability to hold out in faith. I've been in situations where, because I've felt the way that I'm talking about right now, what I'm describing, what I long for, I've carried this in my heart for over a decade, really since I was young. And I've known that I've wanted, this divine union, partnership, children since I was 13. That was like the year I was able to articulate, or 12, I think. Yeah, that was when I was able to articulate what I really, really, really wanted. And it's only grown over time. It's never gone away, it's never gone down. But there have been periods of my life where I was literally surviving and reduced to just like crazy, crazy struggles. And because of that, I fell back into old patterns, and I found myself in, for example, romantic relationships, or, not great friendships, where I had some of my needs met for proximity, physical closeness, pleasure. That's a big one. And things like that. I had those needs met, but in the end, those situations weren't sustainable because they weren't built on the same foundations that I'm trying to build the rest of my life off of, that I'm trying to build off of and return to and nurture and grow, and head in a similar direction side by side in purpose, in devotion. So I do also want to say that, it's okay to, know what you need and want in your life and have standards and fall back on them sometimes, and like eat fast food one day, you know what I mean? Metaphorically or literally, or like, I don't know, people who deal with addiction, having a relapse. It doesn't mean that you failed. It does not mean that you failed. It means that you got as far as you got until you didn't have the resources to get past that next hump. So you relapsed. So you went back to that old pattern. So you called your ex, so you accepted less than you deserved. So you pushed aside your own boundaries, etc. So I just wanted to talk about this and share this with you. If you feel longing, especially if you're someone who wakes up in the morning and you feel this emptiness and this hollowness, and part of that for you is that you want a freaking partner to love you and kiss you and just adore you in the mornings, and to experience that soothing. I mean, we need touch. We need nurturing touch. Literally, we need it to survive. I've said this before, but like, what happens when an infant doesn't get touched in the first day of their life? I don't know how many hours or days it takes, but they will die, literally, if they're not touched. So what does that tell you about our needs as humans? So if this is for you, then, stop denying what you feel. And if you have friends or people in your life who think that they know better than you, or that you're wrong for wanting what they think is a fantasy, but you have acknowledged is just the baseline reality of what you desire and what you want in your life, maybe they're not your friends. I don't know. That's for you to decide. But what I am stepping into in my life is, last night I went to a women's circle and it was amazing. And we were setting intentions of what we wanted to kind of burn away, during this full moon phase. And for me, I wrote a couple different things, but I wrote that I'm burning away invisibility. And I know that there are other people who, share my they're kindred spirits, and they share my philosophies and my perspectives of life, and they agree in the idea that God does have a perfect match for you. Like, there is someone out there, and in fact there's probably a handful of people out in the world that are literally perfect for you. And I don't agree that relationships should be defined by suffering. I don't agree with that. And I think that the more that I accept my own, vulnerabilities and strengths, the more that I kind of feel okay with saying there are some things that are just not okay with me. And like, other people might be great at these things, or other people might have certain skills that I don't have in a relationship, or certain strengths or certain non-sensitivities that I don't have. It's like, for example, what I was naming earlier about how, I cannot tolerate noise in the mornings. I can just remember and recall in my mind and in my body what it felt like for me to navigate the world being visible in my sensitivities and in my lived truth and in my embodied experience. For example, one of those things being, again, that I hate noise in the mornings, or I hate the feeling of long nails like accidentally stabbing me. I don't think anyone really likes that, but some people genuinely don't care. Some people don't even register that, but that's not me. And so instead of trying to change that about myself, I have stepped into a era of my life where I'm embracing that about myself, and I'm being gentle with myself, and I'm actually giving myself what I need, because my feelings are valid and my needs are my needs. And just because I'm wired a certain way right now to be sensitive to noise or certain kinds of touch doesn't mean that I'm going to be that way forever. But I believe that, with the right circumstances and support, I could grow out of certain sensitivities or weaknesses or vulnerabilities or tendencies eventually. Because there are certain things, right? Like triggers that we have that might make it difficult for us to share intimate connections with certain people. Because, if I'm sensitive to a certain shape of the mouth when someone is speaking, that's not always going to fare very well for me if what I want in life is a lot of social interaction or connection or new friends or whatever. So, you know what I'm saying? But there's a balance. There's a balance to be had there. And I am done with denying, myself, or putting myself last, or agreeing with what other people have told me that I'm at fault for being sensitive, or I'm wrong, or I should stop longing for a partner, or, someone is not, or like someone isn't perfect for me. Like I do believe that there are multiple people, friends and romantic people on this planet that are literally designed for me, and I'm designed for them. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be conflict, but repair is accessible and available in perfect relationships, and the capacity to be present, through, little blips is part of what makes something or someone perfect, I think. And perfect doesn't mean flawless, but it means a fit, it means compatible, it means easy, fluid. And even if there is a bump, we navigate it together, we walk through it together. And that's what I believe, because I've been through enough of not that in my life that I just don't want to settle for it again. And I also don't want to carry this shame that my trauma is the problem, because I will admit that there are some triggers and trauma things that holding patterns or whatever that I've had in my life that have, impacted my relationships. However, I cannot force myself to be someone that I'm not. There's a balance with this, and I cannot be dishonest or repress what I need. And so that's why I'm sharing these videos, is because the things that I need, I felt ashamed about for so long, about asking for, because a lot of the time when I've tried to ask for these things in the past, I would be unmet again, and so I would go into these phases where I would protect myself and, still acknowledge that I have these real needs, but, I just need the right person, the right circumstance, the right environment to ask for those things so that I can safely receive them. So you're not wrong for having what you need. This is the end of my video. This is the final bow tie on the package message for you. You were never wrong for needing what you needed, even though you couldn't receive it from maybe people in your life or people from your past. It just means that your match in that capacity, in that aspect, hasn't come to you yet. And, I'm in that interim right now. I'm kind of stepping into building my community and meeting people who do match me on that level. And I mean, last night I had a wonderful connection with a woman who I had just met last night at the women's circle. And it was just great. And it was a lot of things that I'd, been waiting for a long time. I don't know, I don't have expectations for how this connection is going to, unfold in my life, but the fact is that it showed up and it reminded me and it proved to me that there are people out there who have these things and want the same things that you want. And you would not long for what you long for as strongly as you do if it wasn't also looking for you and wanting to find you. So again, if you have needs that are going unmet, do not give up, do not lose hope, and don't lie to yourself, but be honest and own what it is that is true for you, that you love and that you need, and protect yourself when you need to protect yourself, and share your truth and ask for what you need, and be visible when it's safe for you, if it's safe for you, and if that feels like something that can empower you. Okay, so that's everything I have to say. I'm gonna wrap this video up now and tell you a little bit about my description box. So for the last couple of videos, I've been posting captions related to the videos that I post, but on most of my videos I have like a drop-down list of things that I offer. So I do offer tarot readings, I offer intuitive readings, and I also have a psychic and intuitive skill development masterclass that I have. So if you're interested in any of those things, you can just check them out in the description, send me a message, and until next time, I'm sending you so much love, and I'm really happy to be sitting here and being of service in this way, making these videos, because all this stuff is so close to home, and